That's nice.
Good afternoon, people.
Good afternoon.
Welcome. Everybody had a great, safe, enjoyable 4th of July. Celebrating a great day of independence. Be interesting to see how independence in Britain turns out with Brexit over there in the next number of years to see how that works out. So, anyway, well, let me start off with reading the purpose statement. The primary objective of the CAC is to ensure that capital maintenance and public transportation projects and programs approved by the voters during November 2nd, 2004 and November 6, 2012 elections are accomplished with PPRTA funds. This committee reports directly to the Board of Directors. Any question about our mission statement? All right. So call the order, meeting to order. We have right now, we established our voting members. Correct me, Gene is on the bubble right now. If one of our 3 members show up, you can't vote.
If all 3 show up, he can't vote.
All 3, so you can vote on an official thing until that point.
Just won't recognize.
Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Got that, Rick?
We're eager.
Any, I guess I should approve information recommendation. All those in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Sorry, we missed the motion and second on that.
No?
I seconded.
You seconded it?
So did
Rev,
you, didn't you?
Rev,
We
Rev,
both did.
Rev.
About half of us did.
Yeah.
Okay, public comment for a period for items not on the agenda. Any members of the committee have any public comment? Any members?
Oh, they finished that bridge up there over Jimmy Camp Creek that was closed because it's on Stapleton.
Yes?
And I was noticing the announcement on the radio coming in. Is there any way that we can add to the copy that that was a PPRTA project?
On the Stapleton project, that would be
Wouldn't that been?
county, right?
Yeah, it's county. Gotta be county.
Miss Jennifer just walked in. You might ask her that question.
Well, I'm not saying anybody. I mean,
Oh.
whether it's
Oh.
Colorado Springs or it's just add that copy as a,
P was by RTA when
Yeah.
they released the public announcements.
so that they add that to their text there.
That's a really good comment. I think that the member government should be doing that so that we're out there, that improvements being made around the region, or we're recognized for it, even though we got the signs. Not everybody travels in that area, so may not see the signs. So we can certainly make that recommendation to the board. Reb? We make a recommendation to the board that when municipal entities release public announcements about completed projects, that they include the verbiage of funded by PPRTA. Is that?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. That's good. Any other discussion on that? No. Any public comment from members of the audience? Welcome, Jennifer. Mike?
We do release ours with some RTA language. Now, whether the stations actually read them or are required, I'm not sure, but we always put a blurb if
Okay.
it's PCRTA.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes from the June 1st regular meeting.
She had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry, John.
I probably will not be here in August due to back surgery, and September, I'm not sure about yet.
Okay.
Depends upon when it's scheduled.
Okay. We're not planning.
That's a reminder not,
Pardon me?
I was going to remind her not to forget to come back.
That's my second one, so it's okay.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Any comments on the, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes from the June 1st meeting?
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Dills, and seconded by?
Second.
All? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any approve, disapprove? Okay. Thank you very much. Financial report.
Good afternoon.
Good news.
Yes, well, as you can see, in April, we received, for April, we received $6,971,000, which was 100, almost 190 over budget, or 2.8% for the month, and we're $1,682,000 for the year to date. This is still the old budget because the new one hasn't been approved yet, or 6.5% year to date compared to budget. So then, the next page, we're $1,377,000 ahead of last year's actual, or almost 5.3%. The next pages just put the sales and use tax figures into this income statement format and compare expenditures against the budget. And then the following pages compare the expenditures to the total project budget versus annual budget. So are there any questions?
Jim?
Yeah, Bev, it seemed like in the past, you would often put what the balance was, the funds that PPRTA had on hand. Did I miss that, or do we stop?
That's in the board report, and actually, I think the board asked me to stop adding that.
Okay. All right.
But if you'd like to know, I'll let you know.
All right.
You know, it's up to you.
So the real cash on hand is, as I understand it from the board, Jim, and correct me, Bev, but as I understand it, it can be a little bit misleading in terms of we're not spending the taxpayers' money, when in fact we're waiting for invoices, or we're waiting for memorandums of agreement between us and CDOT, and with $3 million that go out the door the next day. And I think that from my take back from some of the discussion of the board members is that that number can be misleading to some of the folks, and rather than try to deal with and argue, is we just not throw that out there in some of
It does make us look like a very wealthy and well-endowed governmental entity in El Paso County.
And we know that there are those that are out there that will say we're not spending the government's money properly.
Yes.
But
Okay.
in fact, it's spent, we're just waiting on an invoice or an MOU to spend it, so.
I
Yeah.
understand.
Didn't think the government had any money, do they?
Well, one of the things is it's a pay-as-you-go system, so we actually have to accumulate the funds for the capital expenditures before we can almost start them. Oh, you can do design or something, but you
Sure.
really can't get into these major constructions contracts before you have most of the funds, so it does look a little odd.
Thank you.
There was a considerable turn down during the month of April. When I say
Yeah.
that, your projection, you got very close to your projection. Have you got some understanding of why it turned down? When I say it came back close to projected.
We didn't receive all of our use tax that month. There's a segment of it that comes from the collection of the use tax on vehicles when folks sign up at the county, through the county process, and then that will probably hit, well, it will hit this next month. So it might seem a little more than over budget this next month.
Any other questions for Bev on the budget? Thank you, Bev.
You're welcome. Oh, that was on the income, on
All
the
right, well,
financials.
that's on the monthly financial report. So on the 2016 budget,
Okay, so Mike's going to come up and talk about his memo, but before he does, I'm just going to point out some of the other pages that changed due to a couple things in Mike's memo. The CAC asked him to change his memo to be more specific in some descriptions on some capital projects. But he also added a line item transfer that is reflected in pages 3, 4, 5, and 6. So I believe that was, let's see, which one of these line item transfers? It was to Garden of the Gods, to Fillmore pavement reconstruction on Centennial. So he added that along with changes of his descriptions. So I just want to point that out. And then on pages 23 and 24, all the way in the back, Centennial Garden of the Gods to Fillmore pavement reconstruction, there's a second column, and in that column, that number changed to 12 million with a little blue highlighting there. And he can talk about that, and it has to do with the construction contract. So are there any questions for me?
Just wanted to make a comment that it's rare that you see the taxes come down. No, you're done.
So,
You didn't get my joke.
oh,
Guess it wasn't humorous.
okay.
It's down.
Are there any questions?
Any questions for Beth?
Yeah, Mike's going to talk.
Welcome anytime.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. Last month, there were some questions on our allocation, so I revised the memo. On Centennial Extension, we added $500,000 to this year's allocation. There is about an $8 million budget, but we only had 1.9 approved, and we are using that for design, and we're starting to do right-of-way acquisition, so I added $500,000 to that project. Emergency Bridge Fund, we are anticipating putting out several bridges for construction here in the fall, so added $766,000 to that project budget.
On the second one, the Mark Dabbling and Fascination Circle, for the Mark Dabbling, is that large culvert that's south of Garden of the Gods between that and Fillmore?
No, it's north of Garden of the Gods. So it's.
Oh, yeah,
No.
between there and Rock River?
Yes.
That big large culvert that goes up?
Yes, and we're actually, there's
Technically a bridge?
two culverts there that we're looking at replacing. They're similar condition, so.
Right there near the footbridge that crosses the river, the creek?
Yes,
Okay.
Then, on the Pikes Creek Greenway, I had originally asked for 1.8, but we changed that to $1 million for the pedestrian bridge. And the other question we had was, how much are we looking at putting in total? So basically, the estimate for that bridge is 9.7, and we're looking at an RTA share of about 3.5 million total when we're done. We haven't hit that mark yet. And that 3.5 million is based on, we had a bridge engineer look at what it would cost to do a basic pedestrian bridge over the railroads, and that was 3.5 million. So that's kind of what we had looked at committing to, and then any other amenities are being funded by other sources.
So it seems like that is 2 million more than we originally talked about, or am I totally missing the boat? 3 million has been the number?
I don't know if we had a good number when the project was added to the list. I think we thought $1 million should do it, but, and Kathleen, as you know, as the project grew, that's one of the reasons she had an engineer look at, well, okay, what would just a pedestrian bridge be, basic bridge, and that's kind of what we're using as the set number for what we're looking for RTA to contribute out of the Greenway Improvement Fund.
So does this delete the Pikes Peak Greenway funding for RTA 2?
No, because I believe there's like 8 or 9 million for Greenway funding total. I mean, there's $1 million already that is for trail improvements.
Right.
So there's, I think, 3 million total, but we're asking to use 2 at this point for the bridge.
The citizens can expect to still see improvements to the Pikes Peak Greenway other than this bridge to the City of Champions project?
Yes.
Okay.
Mike, is this the one that Councilwoman Gabler is concerned about?
Yes.
Right?
I thought so. Okay, that's all I need to know. Thank you.
The next item, so we opened bids in June on the Centennial reconstruction, and the bids came in quite a bit higher. We're seeing some really high construction costs on these projects, so what I've had to do and the bids came in at $9 million. We're actually awarding $8 million. We're leaving a segment out. The last segment is mill and overlay. We'll award that to the contractor later, but we just want to get the reconstruction portions going. So needed to request $800,000 of the excess revenue go to the reconstruction project, and I'm also transferring 3.3 out of Pikes Peak, and that's to cover the construction management of that project also.
So this 800 out of excess revenue, this is of your revised 2016 budget, the
Yes.
additional revenue that we're providing?
The 3.066.
So if you left out the medians and you wouldn't take them out, you might be able to save that. What's the latest on the, I read with interest the local resident comments?
I was there for the meeting. We are looking at maybe putting some back. That we're evaluating it. So there's some concern there's concern about safety and taking them out, but that may not actually be a legitimate reasoning. The medians can be dangerous too. So we're looking at a couple of spots where the citizens are concerned that we've taken them out.
That median coming down the hill, that's a fairly wide median, if I recall. As you go north on Centennial, coming down the hill.
Yes.
Is that the section that you're thinking about taking them out?
Yes. We actually are taking them all the way from Fillmore through the residential and almost to commercial. And there's been some requests from the citizens to put some of them back. So we're looking at that.
So stand by, additional changes may be in store?
Yes, but I'm hoping that dollar-wise it may be a wash, because we're putting some of there anyway, whether it be pavement or curbing.
Okay.
So.
Jim? What about Jersey barrier in place instead of a median?
That's actually, I think, dangerous, because, but besides, we don't do that. I think there's a concern of putting Jersey barrier on arterial streets. That's more of a highway type thing. And aesthetically, I don't think.
You and me apart. You're going one way and I'm going the other.
The residents have that whole lane of traffic, 4 lanes of traffic to cross there, and it seems to me that some of the concerns, and I know a couple people who live over there, some of the concerns are the kids crossing that whole street to get to bus stops.
Yes, and that's one where we're looking at. That seems
Provides
a refuge.
If they cross 2 lanes of traffic and they got a median that's more.
And that's one of the areas they talk about, and that makes sense for us to look at to see if we should put it back.
Maybe the school, they could reroute the bus thing so they don't have to cross that.
Well, it's actually the city bus up there. Yeah.
Mike, what's the status of that pipe replacement down at the bottom of the hill in Centennial?
That's done.
Is that done?
We got that done in June.
I'm sorry, Amy, go ahead.
Oh, back to the Pikes Peak Greenway corridor improvements. I remember this.
Oh, we can't go back.
I know this came up a couple meetings ago, and there was some, I don't remember, I thought that it was coming in around $1 million as well.
I can't hear you, Amy.
What's that?
I can't hear you.
Oh, I'm asking about the money adjustment for the Pikes Peak Greenway, the bridge. And I remember this coming up a couple months ago. And I'm just, I guess I'm a little bit confused as to whether or not this is a done deal, sort of city council has approved. I don't know the background on the additional fund allocation for that bridge there.
Yeah, well, like I said, I think the initial thought was a bridge was going to be about $1 million, but Kathleen did have somebody look at it, and I think that was just kind of a swag at when it was put on the list. But as they actually started finalizing what this bridge was going to look like and where it was going to sit in the length and height, we hired an engineer to really give us a better idea of what's it going to cost.
Right.
And
And I understand that there was a cost adjustment, but was there an approval process for saying, yes, we'll put another $2 million towards that?
we're going through that right now. So, that's what, we're requesting. And so since the question kept coming up, well, where does this end? We said, okay, what we're looking on the RTA side is $3.5 million, up to $3.5 million. We haven't asked for the full amount yet. And so that was a request I had last month, and that's, kind of where we stand right now.
My only concern is you'd be able to justify this, that it's outside the confines of any connection to City of Champions, and that it's truly a pedestrian access issue. The opposition to City of Champions and this kind of stuff, to spending RTA money, and we're taking RTA money, adding to city money, and it's really feeding the whole access to the museum, despite what everybody says. I'm just concerned about the perception that people are going to have that we're spending RTA money for City of Champions projects. And I'm just, in your wording from a staff, that's my personal concern. And I'm expressing it, sitting where I'm sitting, as part of the concern of the citizens of the committee.
I think the only, not the only, but one of the things that came to light, and Craig Blewett brought it up, was a study done many, many years ago before anyone even any kind of idea about City Champions, showed the Greenway had a pedestrian connection to downtown in the master plan. So, so it's not like,
Yeah.
well, we didn't have a cost on it.
Is there some limit to the amount you can expend that is an extension, an add-on, or not on what was originally approved for the project?
Yeah.
Whatever the board approves.
And I'm going to jump in with Dr. Null. That's exactly because Brian said something in the April or May meeting that I've been chewing on, and the concern is, and I'm sorry, Mike, that you're getting this and Kathleen's not here. At what point do you say, well, this is just one other thing we thought about. This is a different kind of barrier we need, or this is a different kind of handhold that we need. So I'm concerned. Something just doesn't feel right, because as I recall, Kathleen's been here more than once, and it just is like, oh, well, this is something that's just come up. And again, it's not directed to you. You can't answer that. So what happens if we approve this and we put a limit to, okay, don't come ever here again because you are now tapped out, or we take it down from what she's requested? What happens?
The board either approves it or doesn't approve it.
In totality.
And we have to remember, we're not the final arbiters.
I understood, but we move forward.
Yeah, we are required to do the due diligence because honestly, the elected officials don't have the time.
Jim?
It isn't the issue of spending it on something else than what we were expecting or different on what we were expecting. But if a neighbor who, I've got a special one in my neighborhood, who asks
Don't we all?
questions. Yeah, I'd like to be able to answer them. And so whenever there's a change, I want to be prepared so I can tell them that. And because people don't look at the whole city budget or county budget and so forth, but they will ask you a question about some particular project. And if I didn't know that we were going to spend it there, I have to say, well, I don't know. And they say, well, what do you sit on that board for? And so I know you're telling us, but I'm just letting you know the kinds of things that happen relative to this issue.
Amy?
And just, in a simplified explanation, to me, it's, while we have $9 million or $10 million in the Pikes Peak Greenway Fund, and $3 million of it is going to a bridge to the Olympic Training Center Museum, or the Olympic Museum. If that's the Cliff's Notes version of that, it sure doesn't sound very good.
It isn't, again, the issue of we didn't approve it. It's an issue of whether you know to give a correct response or not, and that's 90% on us, I guess, to be prepared to do that.
What you understood, whether you understood what you approved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This actually kind of dovetails into another concern that came up at the beginning of the month when we all received that email poll. I raised a question about if it doesn't meet, if the aggregate doesn't meet city standards, why doesn't it, and how doesn't it, and what causes the issue? And the next day, the request was withdrawn because the aggregate didn't meet the minimum basic standards. There's a lot of last-minute stuff that comes in, and we all know, because most of us have been dealing with it for a long time, that this is an extremely difficult job that they have. And there's a lot of last-minute things, and having to deal with, and unfortunately, we are now part of the bureaucracy, whether we like it or not. But it's questions like the ones that Jim got, and quite honestly, I've got some seasoned citizens in my neighborhood who spend a lot of time reading things. And when they grill me about stuff, if I can't answer them, I come back and I grill these guys. And I ask questions. I have to be able to respond to their questions. We all do. And it's part of the transparency of government. It's a pain in the butt for them, I have no doubt. But there's serious concerns in this city right now about how we're spending this money. We've been very good in the past at vetting things in a fairly timely manner, I believe. But a lot of this last minute of, we just kind of threw this in as a, target, and now it's costing, several $100,000 or $1 million more, and it's like, I'm sorry, but $100,000, $150,000 is a lot of money to most people. And when we're paying taxes, we want to make sure it's going in the most efficient, best spent manner possible. And there's questions that have to be answered. So it's been a concern of mine for a while, and I'm sorry to be the one who always is the stick in the mud bringing it up.
Jim?
Yeah, I just, I've had the privilege of seeing the Downtown Association's presentation on what they have planned for the downtown. And I think we're looking at this a little too selectively, because the museum is simply the start of a corridor that they have planned all the way down Vermejo, clear down to Pueblo Street, and interacting that with the downtown area. So we're not talking about a bridge that's going to go from the Greenway to the museum. We're talking about a bridge that's going to go from the Greenway to the new walk corridor all the way down Vermejo. So if you're going to, while we're looking at it, whether you agree with it or not, let's look at the big picture instead of the selective picture.
And if I may, I'm aware of that, and I understand exactly what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. And while the city may is espousing out, and the downtown business group are saying that, the City of Champion people aren't necessarily saying that, and they're tying the bridge to their project and in the stuff that I've read. And so there's a disconnect, and so all we need is a few naysayers to really jump on that bandwagon, and then that criticism of one project expands to other projects. And because of it's kind of on the edge of the gray area, from my point of view. And so while the city may not be saying, and the downtown business group advocating that whole pedestrian parkway on those streets and all downtown, it is definitely going to be a tie to all of that. But that's not the only voice, and people are just looking. And so my only concern is that I never saw a need for it to begin with, but the fact is it's been approved, and so now that it's been approved, I don't want the work that this committee and this group does to be tarnished by wording that's incorrect. We could easily fall over that purposes and be defending ourselves for something that we didn't do. That's my concern.
Well, then perhaps what we ought to do is have the city change the wording that they are going to present or provide the money for the bridge that the original plans called for, a pedestrian bridge, which is going to cost us $3.5 million. Anything over and above that is not our problem. Somebody else will pay for it.
Yeah, that's part of the worry.
The concern, Jim, the concern that Jim raised is the one I've been hearing, is the conflicting messages. And I think the problem is a lot of people are feeling there's a huge distrust of government in this town to begin with, even more so nowadays. And what I'm hearing is they're just spinning this, they're manipulating us to get us to pay for something for this City of Champions project that's, you know, in some people's opinion, is dubious at best. So I'm with Jim. I didn't really see a need for the bridge to begin with because there's already one there. But since it's been approved, I think it's important that we make sure that there's a unified messaging between the folks who are actually doing the City of Champions, because they're shooting themselves in the foot with the conflicting wording and viewpoints that the public is getting. And for those who pay attention, it's concerning.
Can I hear what Jim has? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I've given this a little thought, and there's sort of four issues in my mind that the City of Colorado Springs have said that the City for Champions will not involve any taxpayer money. And PPRTA revenue is taxpayer money. And the Greenway Trail thing has been approved by the voters when we did the extension. And so $3.5 million for a bridge is part of that, I think makes sense. That's a saleable kind of thing. But if the bridge that is proposed as part of the City for Champions is a much more expensive than $3.4 million, that's like a $9-10 million bridge. And if the money that is going in now gets spent on design work for that more expensive bridge, and then the private money doesn't come in, how does the city handle that issue? That's the concern I have. Now, the idea of City for Champions in an iconic structure and all that, I understand. I lived in Seattle in 1962. Seattle had a World's Fair at that point in time. Part of the World's Fair was to build a Space Needle and a monorail that took people from the downtown hotels, restaurants, out to the fairgrounds where the Space Needle was. And there was a lot of people saying, well, gee, why are we spending money for that thing? But in hindsight, that is an iconic structure that has served Seattle very, very well during the last, oh my gosh, 54 years.
Oh, I couldn't, I'm not that old, I can't.
Yes, you're older than I am, youngster. So anyway, those are my concerns, and that's the only one. The other thing, too, is we are not a policy board. The city is responsible for setting their policy and dealing with it. But I think the message to the city is make sure you know what you're doing, because if you aren't able to get the private money, we expect a real bridge to be built with that, and you need to make sure you can do it. That's all.
Okay, Rev and then Dr. Norfolk.
Before we go through everything besides this bridge, I want to note that there is considerable change. They've added an item from what was the budget approved last month. I've got the preliminary budget last month did not have that $800,000 figure in it for Garden of the Gods. So two questions about Garden of the Gods is the first one. Where is that 72-inch corrugated metal that was missed? When I say that, you gave a $1.4 million project for me, when I don't remember my name, the contractor, which was about $500,000 more. It was a better method because it kept traffic on the road. But you lined I thought it was a 96-inch.
No, it's 72-inch pipe.
Brad, use the microphone.
And
What was the one that you lined?
that one, it's a 72-inch corrugated pipe that was rotted away, and we had to fix it or replace it. We looked at replacing it, but that was going to be expensive and more of a timing. It would have pushed the reconstruction of the actual road till next year. So we decided to line it. The structural lining has worked real well. And that pipe goes from South Douglas Creek up to Garden of the Gods, about 2,600 feet.
So,
I would suggest that whenever there seems to be a major blip on an expenditure item that we might not know about because it happened opportunistically or anything else, it might be a good idea to drop an email to members of this group. So the neighborhood says, can you tell me about this? We can at least, and I don't mean little things, I mean big changes. It might be useful sometimes just to let us know that it happened. We never find anything wrong with the way you're doing these things, but we do like to be able to say, well, yes, they're going to do such and such. And I mean on a major project, not little things.
Well, we did come to the board for approval to award that contract, and I did explain that we needed to take care of that, otherwise, because it failed last year, and we didn't want that happening. And we talked about the options, and that, unfortunately, that was a pretty, an additional expense we weren't anticipating.
Yeah, they did bring that lining of that.
Yeah.
I've got just a couple of questions, Mike, not so much on your memo for these particular changes, but on the revised budget, the documents that were submitted, and some of it may just be a refresher. On the Austin Bluffs corridor improvements from Nevada to Academy.
Which page is that?
There's page 4, and it's in all the number stuff here.
Okay.
So as part of RTA 1, part of the initial list, that Austin Bluffs corridor improvements Nevada to Academy. What's left to do on that corridor from now that you've done the bridge? You're pretty much finished. Is this $1,055,000 in the budget? Is that just what's left on that project to complete what you've already programmed, or is this something in addition?
We are done. I'm not sure if might not have some bills we're paying out of this.
Okay.
But there will be some money left over.
Okay. The Austin Bluffs Bridge widening, that's the one out at Woodman and Austin Bluffs, right? And that's just a remainder of funds in that project?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. In the renewal, you, over the last couple of months, have come in and have really kind of stripped the Planters Parkway project down to minimal funds at this point. And you keep saying there's a plan to put that back because you still need to do that. Is that going to be like later in 17 or somewhere where you're going to patch it until then, and then you're going to kind of rebuild this project back up?
No, I'm looking at putting the funding that I've taken in now in 17.
Okay.
And
You're going to rebuild that project back up?
Yes.
In funding, and but you're just slipping it for a year out of the 16? And just
Well, I mean, not that it slipped, it just from a design point, we're not ready. That's why even though we had the construction money this year, we weren't going to need it, so.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
And hopefully we get some kind of control on some of these costs, though, because they are coming in quite high, and that is an issue that we're struggling with.
And then the last question has to do a little bit with transit, and maybe Brian can contribute, but in your budget, you've got sidewalk and bus stop progress for existing routes. Is this improving the quality of the sidewalk around the bus stops and the ADA access to those stops? Is that generally the scope of that project? Okay, thank you. And then we can discuss it later when we get into that part, but the county has, in their submission, has money for the West Colorado Avenue project. and I see nothing in 2016 for the city for that joint project. Do you guys have money in your 2016 for that West Colorado project?
Yes, there is some in there on,
I may have missed it, and if so, I apologize. Oh, I do it. I see there's a W.co, not west. It's not spelled out, so it's different on the list. Okay, got it. I see it. Thank you. That's all the questions I have. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
Let's go back to, because I'm about ready to make a motion. Mike, why did you miss the ADA? It's been identified, as a matter of fact, it's a significant problem. I'm aware of it because of some BRAC studies. The ADA compliance on Centennial. It's implied here that
where are you looking at?
page 10, first item, $800,000. And complying with the ADA guidelines.
The last.
Couple of things there. So I believe these reconstruction projects, Pikes Peak, Centennial, and even the Academy ones, I believe when they were budgeted, that they were just purely, what's it going to take up the asphalt and put it back? As we looked at the project, once we got them designed, we started looking at, we have to address, and anytime you do any kind of major reconstruction of the street, you got to put the curb ramps in if they're missing. And so part of the cost of Centennial is there's a lot of missing ramps there. So that all got put into the cost and the design of what we came up with.
Okay, now can I go to, I want to ask a question about the Greenway, the bridge situation. It's my recollection, and I stand to be corrected, and probably the young lady back here behind me is far more familiar with these numbers than anybody else. But I recall that we had a carryover of $1,021,000. We were asked to approve $1 million in addition to that. That would be the end of it. Not 3.5, but $1 million. Now, the concept of the bridge was conceived actually historically, is my understanding, 92. Somebody has a record of it. It actually came in.
1992, yeah, it's a master plan.
Okay.
And it was on the wish list.
I'm not going to say anything. And in terms of a budget, we were told at that time the estimate for the bridge, nothing else, okay, was a total of $5 million. Kathleen said they had already gotten $6 million, $5 million from the city, part of which was coming from PPRTA, and then there was another $1 million that was going to come from private sources. The last time she came to us, the total cost of the bridge was estimated at $10 million. We were up on the hook for approximately $3 million. Now I hear $3.5 million. I want to know what the numbers were when we originally approved it, because it sounds to me, I don't know how to explain it to anybody, and I've been asked a couple of times, from an opponent, not a proponent. In other words, we're asked to prove a budgeted amount of money that I'm not sure what it is anymore, other than today I've heard definitively that supposedly we had already committed or suggested to the board that they commit to $3.5 million from PPRTA, and that's not a number that I recall hearing, period. I mean,
Okay. Rick Sonnenberg, Pikes Peak RTA, Program and Contracts Manager.
Enlighten us.
Okay. If you'll maybe write down these 6 numbers, the 2015 budget in the Pikes Peak Greenway Corridor paragraph had $1.1 million, and Kathleen Krager committed to the board in December, either November or December of 2014, that was for Pikes Peak Greenway, not the bridge. So the 2015 $1.1 million is Pikes Peak Greenway, non-bridge.
Rick, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Can't hear me?
No.
Okay.
talk through Rick's little echo.
The 2015 budget had $1.1 million in the Pikes Peak Greenway paragraph, and Kathleen Krager committed to the board that was not for the pedestrian bridge. that is still in the carryover budget, the 1.1 million in Pikes Peak Greenway. So that's the first number. The second number is in the original 2016 budget in Pikes Peak Greenway, $1,021,000, and that is for the bridge.
How much?
$1,021,000. Their third number is what's being requested today is to add $1 million to the mid-year 2016 Pikes Peak Greenway for the bridge. So that gets you $2,021,000 for the bridge of the total in the Pikes Peak Greenway of $3,121,000. Of course, I think it was either last month or the month before, there was a design contract for 300-something thousand, so that's underway. But we're just talking the macro issue of budgets, not.
Okay, so of the $3,121,000 that's presented in the 2016 amended budget,
how do you get,
2.021 of that is for bridge.
Yes.
And the balance is for greenway improvement.
Yes, which leaves an unfunded remainder on the 3.5, if you agree with the 3.5 ultimate conviction or promise, that leaves an unfunded amount of $1,479,000
For unfunded
for the bridge.
which would be covered through private donations.
Well, that's
and/or other city funds.
no, because in the mid-year budget amendment, Mike is saying that the 3.5 is the eventual PPRTA funding that he wants, which I'm assuming will be requested in 2017, but he can speak to that.
So we should expect, right now, we've got 2.021 that's been designated at this point. If we approve this, 2.021 with the balance between that and
Thank you.
3.5 to be coming at a later date.
I'm sorry.
So we should expect that the city will come forward with another increase for the balance of 3.5 and 2.1.
That'd be a question for Mike.
I got that all right.
So that's 60% of the Greenway money goes to the bridge.
well, 60%, that's,
Wow.
but it's not that when you stop and think about it.
Huh?
That Greenway money is roughly so much per year. And he's saying specifically, if I understood him, the 1.1 million in the 2015 budget was not the bridge. But I don't,
So I look at it another way. When I look down the project list that PPRTA does, with what the voters said we were going to do with the money, there's a lot of projects on it, because they're going to look at it, I kind of do and I should, but I look at it as it's $9 million we're going to spend on a bridge for just to go from point A to point B across the railroad tracks. It's a great vision. I just don't see spending $9 to $10 million on it. When you look at that project list of all the different things that we can do, that we have on the list that are $8 to $9 million, and shoot, we're doing a lot of work on certain projects for that, not just one bridge across the railroad track. I look at it as it's a huge black eye for the PPRTA if we get involved anymore.
I really can't see committing any more PPR. I'm not comfortable with the amount of funding that we've already committed to the bridge. I can't see committing any further funding. And just a reminder, too, that bridge, you can't ride your bike across it. It is true that you can walk your bike across it, but you cannot ride your bike across it. So how much connectivity there is with the Pikes Peak Greenway, if you're a cyclist and you know that you're going to be walking your bike through an area, there's just so many different things that really hit me funny with this, and I wouldn't vote for a single dollar more of PPRTA funds. If somebody else wants to pay for it, go ahead.
any other comments or questions? I think we've really raised some really good points, and every time this comes up, it's the same theme. It's the same theme, a little bit different discussion because the numbers change, but this theme is the same, is that how do we justify spending $3 million on a pedestrian bridge when $3 million will fix a couple lane miles of some serious road work?
Or improve the trails that was intended.
So, but the decision has been made by the board. We can sit here and pontificate our personal feelings towards this, but the decision has been made to, at least to this point, minus the $1 million that they're requesting right now, the board has supported funding this project to this point. I don't know what the tipping point is with the board and the politicians and to where their comfort level is of how much money we continue to put into this, knowing that they're about ready to approve another $1 million, which only brings it to $2 million, and now the request is $3.5 total. So by adding this $1 million, are we committing to the total of 3.5? So, I mean, everybody's comments are roughly in the same area. I'm uncomfortable with this.
Jim just touched on it.
And so, where is that tipping point in terms of what is justifiable, if you will? So,
I know that the board has approved a certain amount, but I mean, I wonder if there is a consensus, a general consensus, is it not worth, at least giving an opinion, or sort of, we've discussed this and there's some concern about where this is going and this possibly being a black eye, or is that not an acceptable thing to do? Because once you really kind of break down the numbers and you look at 60% or of a total budget, you're like, wow, this isn't headed down the right path.
point taken. Mr. Egbert?
I think we have circled around this quite a little bit, so I'd like to make a motion. And my motion is that we approve the city's capital amended budget as submitted, and then we can see how the vote breaks down.
Before it's seconded, I think Rick's going to make a clarification. I'd like to hear, and by the way, thank you, Rick, for the figures.
It's up to the CAC, but would you want in your recommendation to affirm that the 1.1 million, on the handout, the very first line, that was committed by city staff to the board in November 2014 should remain as non-bridge Pikes Peak Greenway?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have a problem with that. Inclusion.
Yeah, I couldn't, with an honest face, justify taking the entire Pikes Peak Greenway budget for a couple of years and putting it against a bridge and ignoring the deficiencies that are in that. I think that would be ill-advised on our part. I couldn't consciously vote for that, personally.
So there is a motion on the floor, correct?
There's a motion on the floor, and a second by Reb.
No, I just said before it was seconded, I wanted to hear what Rick had to say.
Okay.
So will you accept a friendly amendment to present it as Rick said?
Yes, that's what I said, is that we will include the 1.1 million is for Pikes Peak Greenway, no bridge money.
Okay.
Mhm.
But you're saying approve the 1 million they're requesting?
He's saying.
I'm saying approve the entire City of Colorado Springs capital budget, amended capital budget, which does, of course, include the 1 million, and it also includes the 800,000 and all the others, but we do stipulate that it's our understanding that 1.1 million of the Pikes Peak Greenway is not to be spent for any bridge.
Of the 3 million? One of the three or one of the two? You know what, let's make the second.
And his point, Amy, was that we'll see where the vote falls out and then address it.
1.1 million is for 2015.
So we have a,
No, I understand.
I wanted to go to the board.
So we have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Hoover has seconded that motion. Do we have any discussion on the motion? All right, Carla.
I'm missing something in translation. The one from the 2015 budget for Greenway, sold Greenway money, the 1 becomes part of this 3 million?
Yeah, so if you look on page 5, on Pikes Peak Greenway, the amended, or the budget shows 3.121. 1.1 million of that is for non-bridge work. The balance is for bridge work with another unfunded requirement based on this memo of about 1.479 coming from somewhere, given the city's current estimate is 3.5. Just for the bridge. Dr. Noel.
I think sometimes it's the way we write things. If I handed this to a citizen, didn't know anything about it, and they said, what did you spend on such and such? And then you'd say in the 15 budget, we won 1. 16, 1021 for pedestrian boards in the corridor, not the bridge, but now in the corridor. 2016, $1 million. I just think the reporting of the expenditures has to be so the average citizen who wants to find out what was built and what was funded should read a little bit more detailed to understand what was really going on. I'd just say that for effect, not for any other purpose,
Yeah,
I guess.
and I would respond that the detail is in the contract and the receipts that come in, just like it is for all the other programs that come in, so.
But the big thing is, if your neighbor walks up and asks you and you can't answer it, well, it's in the contract, you see what I mean?
Paul Bev, yeah.
I'll tell you, there's
Right.
brains.
Just for clarification, the motion that we're voting on is to approve everything with the caveats that 1.1 million is dedicated to Pikes Peak Greenway, not bridge, and approving the additional $1 million request. Is that my understanding?
As proposed, yes.
Which means in 2016 budget, there will be a total of $2,021,000
For the bridge?
for the bridge.
Okay, I can't support that.
Well, that's what the motion is.
That's
So-
why
so we-
I was saying.
Okay, so any other questions? We'll call the question. So we have a motion. Everybody clear on what the motion is? We have a second, so we've had some discussion. So all those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Maybe let's start over and raise hands.
Okay, so the ayes, raise your hand, please.
Do I count 4? 5?
2, 3, 4, 5. Nays?
Ten? 10 to 5? Failed, 10 to
6,
5?
7, 8, 9.
Okay, and that's fine. That goes to the board.
Okay,
Board
so-
could
so that
get a
goes to the
reading
board.
as to,
So now I think.
for our comfort and
So
discomfort.
now I think that if we might want to consider, then, if that fails, do we want a different amendment that would discuss and/or address our concerns over the bridge issue, but give the city a go-ahead on the other non-Pikes Peak Greenway? So, Mr. Williams.
That, I don't,
Mr.
my opposition, well, we got two Jims sitting next to her.
Okay, go
I mean,
He said Mr. Williams. He
Oh,
didn't say
I see.
Jim.
But
We have a
I think
clutch
we,
of them.
if you hand this to, if you hand this to the average citizen, says, here's what we did, and read it, you don't understand it. They say, well, wait a minute, the 15 budget was 1.1, not the bridge. Then the budget original was 1, then the budget amended, 1021. Then the budget amended was $1 million, I guess that's $1 million. Total PGR funding, well, these were the original, it means the other one's gone, so you don't count the original. I think the wording of putting out your information for people would not be understood by reading this.
Well, that's Rick's document to us, not the city's document to the public.
But we need to further explain that, because if we're supposed to explain it, we haven't seen it, how do we do it? I'm not objecting to any of this.
Right.
Okay, you see what I mean? But if I say to my neighbor, here, look at this, you know, and they say, can you explain this? I say, well, not exactly, but we built all those things for that money, you know, and that doesn't explain it well. Maybe it's just my ineptness, but I just say that's the, and then they say, what's the remainder that's unfunded? I mean, it's more legalese, architectural structure and so forth to the statement, not what they're saying so much, in my view.
Okay, Rev?
I'd like to make a motion that barring, there's no other discussion about the budget, am I correct?
No.
Okay.
Not for me.
Do you mind? I didn't vote on the motion. I have, and I know maybe this is a separate deal, but I know in the past we've had conversations about the micromanaging, that you have a budget, you said you're going to work on this, we leave you alone to do it. I don't necessarily agree with a $10 million bridge, but if I have a budget to replace a road and I then change and say, well, I'm going to put curb and gutter too, so it's going to cost this, and I'm just only going to pave till here, and I just have concerns that we're telling them how to use their budget, and that's their budget. So that's all.
And she didn't vote, that's probably.
I did not vote.
Abstention that we ought to report.
I agree with Cindy that we shouldn't micromanage. However, when you're coming in asking for an additional $1 million in addition to the $1 million that we've already given you.
But it's part of the Greenway budget.
reads
They
that.
want it
Can't
this
make
year,
sense.
but it's still within their budget.
But again, it's an additional, it's a change. So that's that's what raises the hairs on the back of my neck.
Rev? Oh, wait a minute, Gene.
Well, I think part of the problem I'm having with this is that we're lumping two items under one category and then trying to figure out what's going where. We've got Greenway and Corridor, Pikes Peak Greenway Corridor, which was the 1.1 million done in late 14, early 15, and then we're mixing in bridge funding in there and things get confused. Looking at the letter on page 9, I still can't reconcile the numbers completely, but the handout that Rick gave us is taking care of a lot of that. But when we're mixing corridor stuff with the bridge, and granted the bridge is part of it, part of the corridor, but it's confusing the issue. And so long as we break it out and have numbers that we can recognize and understand, this is corridor, and that's where the money has to be spent. This is bridge, that's where it needs to be spent.
Well, if I may, the bridge is just one project under the corridor budget. And Cindy's right to a point where we don't necessarily scrutinize that they're going to do a half a mile of greenway improvements and fill potholes between Street A and Street B, but yet this bridge has all of a sudden taken on a lot of scrutiny for the reasons that I stated earlier, is that not that it's, we've already been down the argument about whether it's a valid pedestrian greenway improvement project, and we've lost that. Our concerns have been overruled by the board and approved. So given that, I think that what I heard sitting here was that we've all voicing not so much the necessity of the bridge, but the cost and the close tie and the perception that it's tied to museums and City of Champions and other kinds of things, and what that does to the reputation of the committee. I mean, that's we've all made different comments and different perspectives, but I think looking at the nonverbal, I think that in summarizes kind of where we're coming from here, is that, wow, we can get a lot of Greenway improvements done for $4 million or $3.5 million, but yet it seems like we approved $1 million, and then now there's another $1 million, there's still another $1.4 million, $1.5 million coming forward,
And it's not close to being completed.
and, yeah. And
There's
so,
the crux.
you know, it's the credibility issue from my standpoint, but, I mean, did I summarize that? I'm looking at the nonverbal, and I think that we're kind of all in agreement. Okay, Rev, back to you.
I make a motion that the 2016 amended budget be approved as presented with the exception of item 3, page 9, City of Colorado Springs, with clarifications be itemized.
We've just had a motion that got a vote on, failed.
I just took it out, the one item that's concerned, the bridges.
Your motion didn't take it out. You said for clarification.
No, with the exception of item 3,
Oh, with the exception of it.
with the exception of item 3, everything else is approved, okay? With the exception of item 3, page 9, be clarified by separate document. So literally, everything but item 3 is taken care of. That's the issue that we have. Then another motion can come forward to include item 3 or as a separate part of the budget recommendation from CAC.
So we have a motion on the floor to approve the city's amended budget with the exception of the $1 million for the Pike Peak Greenway Bridge.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
Just a question. The original budget, original motion, and the vote on that will be passed to the board, correct? And then this is a second motion, and that will also go to the board. That's all I needed to know. Thanks.
Correct, Rick? Yeah, okay. All right, so any other discussion on the amendment on the floor? Rick? I think he was going to.
You can't.
Had suggested
Can't
we
eliminate it.
discuss that in a separate area. So, Dr. Nelson?
In number 1, we say $1,100,000, the Greenway corridor, not the bridge.
He's on the cover sheet from Rick, yeah.
Okay, so we're not talking about this right now.
No, I'm talking about American Beautiful Park Production Bridge funded by PPRTA.
Yeah, that's not part of this discussion at the moment.
Okay, so none of 1, 2, 3, or 4 is being voted on now.
We're talking, correct.
We're taking it out of the
Correct.
discussion.
We're talking about this memo and item 3 on the city's memo as part of our proposed budget.
Fred's motion is to remove the Pikes Peak Greenway
We're
from
voting for the whole thing to be approved except
so
that,
we can deal
which
with
is
that
that.
separately.
Okay? All right. All those, we'll call for question. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
That was that Joan?
Yes.
Okay. So, any abstentions? Cindy? Cindy again? Okay. So that motion addressed. Does anyone want to start a discussion having to do with what we relay to the board about the bridge?
Making notes, Rick.
You got to do it, Rex. You got to.
I know, but I've been making notes. So I'm going to put forth something because literally we report to the board. And there's been a lot of discussion about this.
Microphone where?
Yeah.
I don't care if anybody hears me.
I do. I don't want to miss any word of wisdom.
That's for sure.
There's been a lot of discussion about it, a lot of opinions. There's a concern from, Rick brought it up about an issue of the downtown plan for the pedestrians moving around. And I didn't even know where Pueblo Ave was until Rick had to tell me. Just because I live here doesn't mean I know where we're at. But the concern seems to be that PPRTA could be perceived by voters as helping to fund C4C, which is also a controversial situation. So I think a motion to present the ideas to the board and why there are concerns, because I think the first vote was 11-5 with one abstention. So there are 11 different opinions out there that literally have to be expressed to the board in a relatively brief time. So a motion to put that on, to put that in there, why it was approved or what would be considered approval.
I don't know, to me, it's fairly clear. We don't have a problem with the city's budget except for the bridge.
Well, it's gone. Everything's been approved except the bridge. Now I'm trying to address that one
No.
item 3 of 9
Yeah, that's true.
on page 9.
And there was a separate motion that said that if you put the bridge in, there were 5 in favor of and 11 were opposed.
Right. So we have to express.
So what else do we
How
need
do
to
we
say?
explain that? How do you put a motion to,
Well,
or is that just my report?
well, Jim explains it, and he says we were having problems with a bridge that was tied, an expensive bridge that was tied to
Well, we've already,
City for Champions.
we basically already approved $1,021,021 for the bridge, and that's been approved by the board. So we've got $1 million of RTA money already approved for the bridge. What we're basically, what that vote just did was not recommend approval of an additional million,
Correct.
but it must also include, with the potential unfunded, of another $1,479,000, because they have stated that the cost is 3.5. So what I heard and what I saw from the nonverbal is, it's the 3.5 number we're concerned about. This million is just one more increment towards the total of 3.5. So at some point in the future, we're going to see another $1.5 million come back to make that 3.5 number whole. And so we're now getting what was $1 million for design and for RTA contribution to the bridge. That $1 million is now turned into $3.5 million. That's that's the bottom line from my perspective.
And the board has
And
never.
with still unfunded, what I would term an unfunded liability for something that is not even near construction, let alone completion.
Exactly, and you have no idea what the bids are. And so what may be more palatable would be to have the city come forward with a proposal that caps RTA money for this bridge at a certain level, and anything over and above that from bid construction or bid advertising or whatever else has got to be covered from some other source in terms of how the city ties it, whether they tie it to City of Champions, whether they tie it to pedestrian access or whatever. But maybe a consideration of something that says we'd like to see the city come back and cap what RTA expenses are going to be for this. We were uncomfortable with $1 million. Now we're being asked to be comfortable with another $2.5 million, and that just, where does it end? I guess is a question. Rick, and then Amy.
Well, I'm just trying to take the issue out of the conversation. If everybody's worried about PPRTA money being spent on this bridge, we've already given them 1.2, 1.021 million.
Right.
Well, the face is already dirty. So how much dirty can you get in your face?
You want to fall in the mud puddle twice or once?
Yeah, but the point I'm making is let's take that part out of the conversation. We've already done.
$1,021,021, take it out, yeah.
No, I mean, take out the fact that is gonna make us look bad if we okay this $1 million. If we're gonna look bad, we already are.
Yeah, good point. We've already got our fingers in the pie.
That's right.
Yeah, all right.
Well, no, because we're not spending 60% of the budget on that bridge.
I'm not Cindy, that's not our problem.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with the fact that I think the vote sends a message. I think that you'll be able to develop or deliver the message. The only thing that I would recommend, instead of coming forth with a statement, I think maybe could be time to move on. I can't believe I'm saying that, but anyway, but and if we have things that maybe we'd like for you to add to your report, I'm really interested in the real percentage of the Pikes Peak Greenway budget that we've already committed. So that would be something that I would want to email you and have you kind of deliver as part of, your report or whatever. But I think that everybody's aware of the controversy and the problems, and for us to come together and put together a statement that we're going to be delivering to the board, I think would be really challenging at this point.
Well, Cindy and then Bev.
But what we've done now by taking out that million is we have a out of balance amended budget. So we have to do something, right?
No. It's okay, because what Rick will do for Jim's report to the board is put the two motions in, first Jim's motion, and then Reb's motion, and then what some of the discussion items were that you've already talked about, like the percentage of this Greenway budget going to this bridge and so on, what the concerns were. And then the $1 million is still in the city's capital budget. It's just that we'll wait and see if the board wants to approve it as it is, going to the bridge, or if they say, okay, we're going to study this a little more, just kind of leave it in the budget as undetermined for their capital for the city. And then we could go forward with that, so everybody has a budget that's approved, and it's just that we're not going to spend the $1 million until it's determined by both, if the board wants it that way, by both the CAC and the board again. And so then you wouldn't have to discuss it further today. You can, get your thoughts together, and then Rick can summarize kind of what has been said, so when Jim gives his report, he can just go down the items.
All right, Mr. Egbert, then Mr. Knoll.
Yeah, the comment I wanted to make is this is an issue really the board owns, and our job is to advise the board. I think we have given them advice, but not a solution. And after they deliberate, if they have something they want to ask us to give them advice on, they can send it down to us. We'll be happy to do that.
And we've been consistent in our message on this particular subject.
Yes.
Dr. Knoll?
Yeah. Is this statement correct?
What statement?
Did we supported 1.1 million to fix up the Greenway corridor, first of all.
Yes.
So then we said, you start with an original budget. We haven't said anything about the pedestrian bridge yet. So when you're proposing the 1021 pedestrian bridge, it got approved. So that puts us at 2 million, right?
Right. For the
Not for the
Greenway
bridge.
project, for the Greenway.
Yeah, but that's pedestrian bridge, right?
Right.
And then this budget amended for the pedestrian bridge, or for all of it?
No, just for the bridge. It says
Just the bridge.
And that's an additional.
And so we got a corridor funding figure here now of 31210. And is that item 1, 2, and 3 added all together?
yes.
Yes.
But the bridge
Well, then how
itself
come the
isn't.
total fund, so now you start talking about just the bridge again. You see, I think what happens here to we lay people is if I would try to explain that to my next door neighbor that says, I don't know what you're talking about. You either build a bridge and it costs something, or you didn't.
Look at it, let me try it this way. There's an overall pot of money for Pike Peak Greenway. One project under that entire budget is the bridge. We had a discussion about, and they've tied the bridge to pedestrian access and bikers access from across the railroad track. We committed $1,021,000 to that early on, and now the city's coming back with another $1 million. They still have $1.1 million in their non-bridge fund that's under that bank, so it's just sub-accounts under that overall budget. So right now, that Greenway budget for 15 and 16 is only $2.1 million after we disapprove this request for $1 million. So that you have to look at it as we're providing a lot of granularity to just one project under a pocket that we really haven't done on any of the other pockets or budgets in the past. But because of the emotional issue of the bridge, I think that We're providing a lot, I think Cindy's point was well taken. We're getting into some microscopes here under some projects. But it's a consensus of this group that it's a contentious issue for RTA funds to begin with, and it continues to be. That's the way I interpret it.
So the total PPG corridor funds is 3,121, period, 000.
No, it's 2.121 right now, based on our amendment.
Yeah, it's only 2 right now.
So what isn't funded?
The $1 million that they're requesting to add to that fund. Rep, we got to move on.
Yeah, I know. Jim, we didn't separate this out, the city did, out of the
Correct.
Pikes Peak Greenway.
Correct.
Just, well, you and.
Yeah, your point, yeah, correct. Gene?
I apologize for poor memory. Where did the $3.5 million commitment to PPRTA come?
It hasn't. It was just in their memo that
It's on bottom page 9, item 3.
it was the city is, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, please. In their memo, what they're saying is, the city is saying they plan on spending $3.5 million of RTA Pikes Peak Greenway corridor funding for this $9.7 million bridge. No one, to my knowledge, has committed that the RTA will spend 3.5. I think that's the city's estimate of what they expect to spend on it.
Yeah, yes, based on last month's question, where does it end?
Right.
Went and talked to Kathleen, she said, okay, here's 9.7 million estimate, a typical bridge is 3.5 million, that's what we anticipate coming to the board to ask for when all is said and done.
Did that clear that up?
Yes, and that means that we're really talking about again with regard to Greenway of 4.6 million total.
If you add the extra money to the Pikes Peak Greenway total budget, yes. And 3.5 of that total is for the it would be for the bridge.
Half of it's for the bridge.
Right. Okay, any other questions on the bridge? Any other discussion on the city's budget as presented? Okay, thank you very much for that conversation, folks, and
They
discussion.
do this in, excuse me, just informational, would they do this in stages?
What?
So
In
that
stages.
you do one part of the project first and spend that estimated amount of money, and then later you do the next, and then later the next? Or is their intent to go right in there and do it?
I can't address their intent. Yeah, I have no idea.
That, it looks like they're going to do it incrementally. Where does the money come from? Do we know they just go build the doggone thing or not?
Well,
Details to follow.
that's something we don't know.
They're still in the planning.
Shouldn't ask us unfair questions, I guess.
They're still in planning. They're still in the planning and design stage there, Jim.
Okay, Jennifer, any questions on the county, the county's amended budget? Any questions for Jennifer on the county's amended budget?
I thought we approved the whole budget with the exception of page 9.
Oh, did we? Okay.
Item 3.
I want to make sure. So we approved we approved the 2016 amended budget in its entirety with the exception of the $1 million ad for the city. Okay. So did anybody have any questions about any of the other stuff? All right. I don't have any either. All right.
So we don't need.
Next item on the agenda. 2016 capital maintenance and public transportation contract, City of Colorado Springs.
Mike Chavez, City Engineering. Yeah, we can do this the hard way or we can do this the easy way.
Just be prepared.
Based on the history of this committee,
No.
Jake?
Can I make a suggestion that we split out 9, 10, and 11? Talk about those first.
Smart man.
Items 1 through 8 are going to be another lengthy discussion.
Okay.
Administrative question.
Okay, yeah, I hear
Okay.
that.
Is this an addition to page, or item 6A?
No, that, what you have in your hand is another agenda item, Rick.
Oh, I didn't have.
That's the law. That was the log, the change order log.
Oh, okay.
We had an item.
Amy, did you have a question?
No, we were just playing papers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
So, Jake has made a suggestion that we discussed items 9, 10, and 11 on the city's thing first. Any objections to that from the group? Do you want to address those?
Yes, that's a good idea. Okay, so the city is seeking recommendation for approval from the CAC for 3 contracts. The first one is for a construction contract for Kiewit infrastructure for the Centennial reconstruction for $8.1 million, with the intent of awarding an additional $1 million for the third segment, which is a mill and overlay. Just this year's budget's pretty tight, so we're just looking at
You think that
adding
may be next year?
maybe even this year. They weren't planning on doing that work till next spring anyway.
Okay.
So, Jim,
Yes, Rick.
we have 1.4 million for the rebuilding of the 72-inch culvert, an additional $800,000 for ADA requirements. And now the contract is 8.1, 8.2. I'm going to use round numbers, okay? What's the total cost of the project? Because it's all interrelated, and where does it stand with respect to your original estimate?
The total project we are estimating to be about $12 million. Originally, it was $8 million and change. But the additional pipe work, that's 1.4, that was not anticipated, and then just the bids that came in last month were substantially higher.
So the total project's run 50% over your original estimate?
Yes. Part of that being that it was the scope of the project is, like I said, I think we were just looking at pavement replacement, but we have to fix what's underneath. We need to bring up
So
this.
there's a little bit of both a scope change
Strange.
plus a cost escalation for bid prices.
Yes. Well, quite a bit of cost escalation.
Okay. All right.
Can I ask real quick, what do you attribute that cost, that drastic cost change to? In the offer, in the bids that you received?
Just the construction is heated up, and it's not just here locally, just prices are going up in general and around the state.
So it's just a supply and demand issue?
I think so, yes.
Any other questions on that one? Next.
Next one is for Wilson & Company for the construction management, inspection, and material testing for this project for $967,000. That's about 10% of the construction costs, and that is kind of in the ballpark of what we're seeing for these projects.
Okay.
And then the number 11 is we're awarding final design to AECom to finish out the Pikes Peak reconstruction project.
The one you're taking all the money out of?
Let's have a little.
I have an object to this. That's my road. The only thing on this whole 20-year period that you guys are going to fix, and it's mine that you're putting.
No, we'll get it. We'll get it.
Yeah, I'm not going to live
I'll
long
bring my
enough to rate
shovel
you
over,
guys
Brad,
to
we'll
go.
fix what's
At
in
least
front
you
of your
get
house.
something.
What? My name on a street? Whoop-dee.
Any questions with Mike on any of those three?
I had to get
Maybe we have a little footbridge across a stream somewhere we can name after him.
Well, I'm actually,
I need someone built today at the rate this is going.
the Pikes Peak Ave project is very important because that road is in terrible shape.
Yeah.
So I bless, go.
We're pushing that one.
Go forth quickly.
Hey, that was a personal thing. I didn't mean to.
No, I saw a smart car get swallowed the other day, I swear to God.
Is that a bad thing?
Was that the second bump I hit in that hole?
He hit a squirrel and it totals the car.
Joan?
Yeah. I would move recommendations of item 9, 10, and 11 presented by the city to the board.
So that would
Second.
mean we're going to split out the others. That's what you're proposing?
Yes.
Okay. Would you reword it so that it's clear that we're separating the first 8?
I'll do it.
I would recommend that, or my motion is to separate items 1 through 8 for additional discussion and additional vote, and that I move the recommendations of items 9, 10, and 11 to the board as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Rick, you got that? Yeah, it was unanimous? Any abstentions? Okay. You got it, Rick? Okay. All right, Mike.
Okay, all right, the next item. So this, I think, and I mentioned this last month, so the city is kind of revamping the way we select consultants. We traditionally either had everyone and their brother on an on-call list for $100,000 max, and then anything larger than that, we had to go to an RFP process. What the trend now and what cities and municipalities are doing is more of an on-call where you select a smaller number of consultants with a higher limit so that you can basically give them work as it comes up. So we are in the process of approving 8 consultants for stormwater projects, but we want to make these contracts available for use not only for the city stormwater, but for engineering and possible RTA work. So what we're requesting is approval of these contracts. They're going to be $3 million a year max with a $500,000 task order limit for non-RTA, and we're asking for a $200,000 limit on RTA funds. And the reason we'd like to bump that up a little bit from the $100,000 is example of the Chestnut Bridge that blew up on us last year, and we were able to get HDR on the on-call for some basic work for $100,000, but we had to follow up with a full-blown contract. But the higher limit just gives a little more flexibility if we have. And what I anticipate using RTA funds with these contracts is we have a bridge that fails or collapses, and we got to get somebody in there quick to start doing some remedial work and start planning a final design. And $100,000 just isn't quite enough to us to get them going. So we're asking $200,000 seems like a good number that gives us flexibility, but still isn't that higher limit that seemed to be.
So let me ask a question before we start the discussion. So the $3 million a year is your contract limitation, but if I understood you correctly, there's a breakout within that. That's your contract for stormwater, but you have a $200,000 limit on RTA-related projects.
Per task order.
So this $3 million is not all RTA money.
No. So we could, basically, the $3 million would allow six task orders that we give a, you know.
200,000 apiece.
No, 500, because for the city, it's 500. On the RTA, it would be 200 per task order.
So you could award, theoretically, you could award up to $3 million, 200,000 at a time with RTA money. No city money, no city stormwater, theoretically.
Well, yes, but.
Okay, so this 300,000 a year, this $3 million a year times 7 times 8 is not necessarily all RTA money. That's the city contract limitation.
Yes.
I wanted to.
Jim, I want to ask you a question before you go further. The $3 million, you've got a contract with, quote me, Company B, okay, totaling $3 million, and the task orders will be $200,000 each.
For RTA.
Only if they apply to RTA.
Mm-hmm.
But the contract to me is still just $3 million. It's up to you to tell me, okay, bill PPRTA as PPRTA or bill as a city. Is that?
Yeah, we would break it up as needed. And like I said, and quite frank, $3 million is quite a bit for a consultant, you know.
Oh, God, dang.
Million here, million
Okay,
there.
Jake?
I have a couple different things.
I hope you're gonna
Number
ask it.
one, nowhere in the wording does it stipulate that we're not committing $24 million worth of PPRTA money.
We have a budget that we have to stick to. You know, so this is just a mechanism to get work out.
The other thing I have too is PPRTA is committed to pay only for stormwater as it affects roads.
Yes.
That's also not stipulated anywhere in here in writing.
I think we've had that discussion already.
Well,
No.
we've had the
No, we
discussion,
haven't
but in what you're asking for, it's not mentioned in there, and you're wanting us to commit to $200,000 task orders. Now we're leaving it up to Rick and his staff to look at every engineering invoice and make sure it has to do with the road or the right-of-way.
And he will do that very, very effectively. So to answer your question is Rick will be watching this, and if he sees an issue, he'll bring it up to me or to you or the board. So,
And the second thing I have is, if you remember a couple months ago, we sat here and grilled Corey for hours on this task order limit.
Yeah.
We approved him at $100,000 task order limit to fix emergency stormwater under the roads.
yeah.
You're asking us to approve you $200,000 to design what Corey said he could fix for $100,000.
Well, no, he didn't say he could fix for 100. That's why I was asking for $500,000, because it varies. No, I know. And that's why we came back with the small limit, because we understood that limit was a little uncomfortable, but what we're looking for here is some flexibility to be able to get out and fix and, you know, design and take care of things. Chestnut Street, we move very fast. We used an on-call to get some repair work going, some design work. We had it designed by fall, bid it, and so it'll be a little bit over a year that road's closed. The neighborhood, the citizens are not happy.
Yeah.
We didn't move fast enough for them, and we moved fast on that. And so that's the purpose of a little higher limit, so that we can respond to these situations. Not like we're trying to pull anything over you guys. Rick will see the invoices, and like I said, what I see these stormwater contracts, and we're going to bring in another batch of general engineering to you next month, hopefully for same limits, because we're condensing it to about 30 firms that are on call, that we want to be able to use them without having to go RFP every time there's a decent-sized project.
Just a two-part kind of a question, just for clarification. You said the RTA is going to be limited to 200, and the city's limit is 500, so we're looking at per task order could be as much as 700.
No, the task order would be 500 max.
Okay, 500 max, 200 of that possibly
Yes.
RTA. Okay, gotcha, thank you.
And quite frankly, I don't see us really mixing funds. It's like I said, we just see that
Leveraging.
a bridge
Yeah.
issue comes up, we can use these contractors, the consultants, will probably be on our general list too. But
And then you said most of this, the design and planning are the first things that really cause. Can you, just for context, give us an idea on the Chestnut, because that's a fairly big emergency project that we dealt with recently, what the immediate design and planning costs, roughly, just roughly?
Yeah, boy, I think the whole engineering was maybe, was it 800,000?
Okay.
And we issued 100,000 tax orders just to get them going.
Right,
So
right. That's it. That's what I
So
need.
this is really, I mean, we've criticized the members' governments in the past for, in some cases, not being efficient. And basically, what you're bringing forward to us is a city change in policy to be more efficient and expedient in order to respond to emergencies, of which RTA-related work could be part of. And that part of would be limited to those $200,000 task orders.
Yes. And not just emergency, but just in general, when we get a budget approved, you know, these contracts are renewal, it'd be very efficient to have when our budget's approved in late December, to be able to have consultants on board ready to go,
Yeah.
rather than have to go RFP. That's like a 2-month process. We don't always do them concurrently just because it's too much work. So we can just divvy out the work and get consultants going early in the year.
I just want to make sure that I'm clear. Had you not had a $100,000 limit, the Chestnut project would have moved forward more quickly. Is that what you are saying?
No, because we had a on-call, we were able to get going, and the 100,000 was enough to get them going, and we had them give us a proposal, very, very fast turnaround. They came back, and we came to the next board meeting for a full-blown contract. That was a little bit atypical. What I'm saying is, if we have a $200,000 limit, we can give a consultant a better plan of, do this for us to start with. They can get going, and then we
But
could.
you've got a contract in place versus on call, which you now have to initiate a contractual process for.
Well,
Are your on calls actually on a $0 value contract, or are they just been approved for on-call work?
They will be, let's see, they are I don't know if, I don't know if that's considered $0. There's a not to exceed limit on them per year.
Okay.
But they're not guaranteed. It depends on the scope and the task that we assign them.
Okay. Cindy?
The RFP process that you're talking about,
Mhm.
is that stipulated by PERTA, or is that your policy?
That's just typical
And
procedures
I
for.
understand that, but our difference between 100 and 200, I guess I'm wondering why you bring that up as you have to go out for RFP. If you have a 250,000, you don't necessarily, you could still use these contracts.
Oh,
right? You just still have to come to us for approval, right? You wouldn't have to RFP necessarily.
No, what we're trying to avoid is having the RFP.
But if
thing.
we say 100 instead of 200, that's not going to change your contract. I mean, you can still do that, right?
Yeah, it's a little bit more work because I said the $100,000 limited us to small projects, and we want to use these on call for the more intermediate sized projects where 100,000 isn't quite enough to get them going.
I feel comfortable with the existing limit only because of the way that you answered my first question. The Chestnut incident was kind of a catastrophic, kind of worst case scenario. And still there was a mechanism in place so that you could start to address those issues. And it seems like my understanding is you have the flexibility that you need and the wiggle room that you need in order to get things going. It's just my opinion.
I think like I said, we like a little more room, flexibility. The timing worked out that the consultant was able to get scope and fee to us and to the board, but if it had been a little later, it might have been like a month and a half before we came here, and that would have left a gap that either we stop them or we just, on faith, let them keep working, and hopefully you guys approve the contract.
Jake brought up a point, and we've had quite a little opening here, segueing into this. PPRTA only takes care of stormwater within the right-of-way. Yet the invoices that you provide Rick don't get seen for perhaps 45 to 90 days after the work is done. So how is he supposed to segregate, among other things? Douglas Creek to the west, you said you had to go 800 feet upstream. I know damn good and well the right-of-way ain't maybe 800 feet from the road.
No, but we have to protect the asset. We're spending $3 million, $2 million on a bridge. We're going to do what it takes to protect it, and that means we may have to go upstream or downstream.
I understand, but should that go to PPRTA to protect that structure? That's the city's responsibility.
It needs to go to RTA. There's no funding mechanism. If we fix a bridge or if we fix Centennial, we need to do it right. And it may.
But why should PPRTA pay for the stormwater problems that the city has.
Well, every bridge is susceptible to it, the water's underneath it. I mean, that's typical. CDOT replaces a bridge, they do a lot of creek improvements.
I see where you're going, Ray. Yeah, well, and it kind of leads me to, I was going to wait and see how this fares out.
I'm sorry, I'm having a problem with this.
I want to distance ourselves from stormwater unless it's incidental to the work being done to protect and, to fix and protect the roadway. And so the city has got a $1 billion stormwater deficit, and yet our work is going to be covered under a stormwater contract. And the only segregation of what's been RTA money is in the invoice and the account that they use to send to it. And so the visibility and accountability of RTA-related, stormwater-related work to RTA projects under a larger umbrella of stormwater contract bothers me somewhat. I'm not questioning the accounting practices. It's not stated in here clearly about these are contract mechanisms for which to cover RTA-related, stormwater-related work that's related to an RTA project, and it's just not clear. So if someone were to pick this up in a public meeting and they show that there's a $3 million contract for on-call stormwater design services funded with PPRTA funds, the segregation and the distinction is not here in any of the detail or descriptions that we see, and that bothered me.
And that would be covered in the actual task order that's issued that defines the scope of work, the location.
And so
if anybody had a question or if they thought.
And so while we're not questioning the practice, the question would be is that we have to become informed about what it is you're actually doing, and we all have to understand it, because if it goes through in its state and someone were to do a public records pull and see that we just funded $20-some million worth of stormwater stuff with RTA money with no distinction about how it ties to RTA-related projects, that to me becomes the problem. I'm not saying change it, but we got to understand so we can answer it to our constituents and citizens, and the board needs to understand it as well, and that's my concern.
Well, and actually that starts with me, because I have to be careful that I don't authorize RTA money for non-RTA related. So I think, the accountability starts with the member governments. And like I said, Rick is very good, and he's called me up and asked questions, and I've been able to explain to him, and he's brought things up before we actually did it, and we discussed it. So I think there's some safeguards there.
Okay, Gene, and then
Sam, I'm going to concur with what you had to say about the public's perception of this, because when I looked at it in the package, the first thing that came to mind is why are we paying for stormwater?
Exactly.
I think the wording needs to be changed to make sure that the cover as well as the individual items down here specifically state and stormwater-related expenses tied to the PPRTA project.
And we can make that, if we approve this, we can make that part of our recommendation to the board to have them direct the city to make that clear in the final paperwork, so that if someone does a public records pull and they see this, it's very clear that while we're using an umbrella stormwater contract mechanism to do this work related to RTA projects, and that distinction to me needs to be made.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I have one other item. The wording in here to me is confusing, and it says on line 3, and I'm going to take the first one on page 1 for matrix, which is all up on page 2. But on line 3, it says order limited to 500 per task order, that's good, with a yearly limit of $2 million per year per contract. If you issue multiple contracts to Matrix, $3 million each, in 1 year, this per year per contract makes it sound like you could $3 million contracts with every one of these 8 vendors in the same calendar year.
No.
That's the way I
No.
interpret it.
No, it's a, one contract, each consultant will get one contract with a $3 million.
So if you said 3 million per year per contract per contractor, that would limit a contractor to 3 million a year.
All you really need to do is with a limit of $3 million per year, period.
Yeah, we're gonna-
That's, we're discussing a contract on this, the wording implies that there could be more.
Okay. Rick, did you have something to add?
The past practice for task orders is that they come over to the PPRTA staff with the first invoice against that task order. I'm wondering, and this is a surprise for the CAC and a surprise for Mike, I'm wondering if we might consider a process change where the task orders come over to me before any work starts, before an invoice arrives.
But in my discussions that I had with Rick over the stuff that Corey brought forward several months ago, that was something I was not aware of in terms of a process where PPRTA staff does not know a task order has been issued. They only know about it once the work's been done and an invoice has been submitted. So to me, that kind of puts a burden on the city if RTA would disapprove an invoice for a couple $1 million, the city's now got to come up with that money because the work's already been done. Somebody's got to be paid at this point. Rick, with your suggestion there, does that border on the micromanagement aspect of Mother May I when the city is reacting within their duly allotted budget to do the work that's required of them?
As you stated, the risk is that the city's taking the risk if we continue the current process and a task order comes over with a $50,000 invoice, and I have a concern about it, and Bev and Rob have a concern about it. We bring it to the policy group at the lunch pre-meeting before board meetings, and it's not unprecedented that a city council member that's in that meeting in years past has handed the invoice back to city staff and said, you're going to have to find somewhere out of the city budget, the non-RTA city budget, to cover this. So that's happened in the past. So let's just take a worst-case scenario and say it's $50,000, $70,000, $100,000, and it's rejected by the policy 4 and eventually potentially the full board. The city's taking the risk. So I'm proposing a process that might help the city reduce their risk.
Okay, Brian.
That's, and it's amazing, because this has come up in the past, and I like the suggestion quite a bit, because there's been times in the past where we've kind of agonized over, okay, well, the project's already going, and it's already, so now what do we do if we say no? They've got, and there's been times where it's been rejected by policy, but I like the idea that it would give, some protection not only to the PPRTA, but also to the city, if this stuff was kind of at least vetted, given some basic vetting up front rather than after the fact. So I like Rick's suggestion.
It's really, just a minute, Amy, if I may, just to continue his thought. It's really not vetting, it's simply a heads up.
Yeah.
Because Rick doesn't have approval authority over that part. He can approve the invoice, but it's really more of a heads up that he might be able to say, hey, I questioned this ahead of time versus questioning it after the work is done and the invoice is submitted. So it's really an administrative review, not an approval process, if you will. Now, is that a correct statement, Rick? So it's really more of an administrative heads-up review. We're issuing this task order, and you could probably put a dollar value on it, discuss with what's a comfortable dollar value, because you certainly don't want to see a $10,000 change order necessarily, you know, but $100,000 or $250,000 task order could create a significant amount of risk for the city. But so I want to be clear, it's not really a vetting, it's not an approval, it's not a mother may I, it's just simply heads up, we're getting ready to let this task order.
Jim?
Is that fairly stated, Rick?
Yes, particularly if the task order includes the scope of work, and the scope talks about how far out of the right-of-way that the stormwater improvement is going, and that's when I might raise my hand or bring it to the policy group through Rob and say, it's outside of the right-of-way, X number of feet. Is that a concern?
Mike, can a task order have multiple funding sources on it?
It could.
You could cite multiple.
It could.
Typically not, but you could.
Yes. Now, the only concern of what Rick just mentioned is when we're starting to look at a bridge, you know, we can kind of estimate, but we don't have a real good idea that far, how far the improvements would go. So it would generically say, you know, bridge and creek improvements related to. Yeah.
Jim, Amy?
I'm sorry, Amy, yes.
Oh, that's it. May I ask you a question, Rick? Is there, I remember several months ago us getting into the weeds about bridges versus culvert and sort of all of these definitional things. So as we're going into what seems to be new territory in addressing stormwater issues within the PPRTA, is this new territory, and are there definitions and guidelines for you already so that this is, you've got it, you understand, you'll know exactly if you get a task order, this is in, this is out, or is there still some kind of finding that has to take place?
There is no written policy, but the practice, the understanding we have with the board is within the right-of-way, and anything that's obvious to protect the bridge primarily upstream, because that's where the water's coming from, and that's where the force of the water might harm the bridge structure. And back to that policy about what's the definition of bridge, it's anything over 4 feet in diameter, is that right, Mike? So there is some guidance, and we've had occasional instances or invoices, but with approving, 8 vendors and this potential amount of money, it's potentially going to grow greatly. So we may need a written policy on it.
Well, what would be growing greatly? Because in my mind, what the PPRTA would cover in terms of stormwater infrastructure has not changed in terms of definitions and limits.
Yes.
But what you're saying, there's an increase because?
I'm assuming there's an increase because of the number of vendors and the dollar amounts that are mentioned for these 8 vendors.
So my mind goes to, so PPRTA is getting more into the business of covering stormwater.
Well, again, my assumption is that with the passage of 2C, that separate pot of money that the city has, they're going to be paving more roads. So as they do the mill and overlay, they're going to be checking the culverts that go into the road, and for a lot more roads, because they weren't checking those for what the PPRTA has been paving, because we've only been paving a few roads, but now we're not paving any. 2C is doing all the paving. So because 2C is going to be looking at a lot of roads to mill and overlay, my assumption is they're going to be looking at the culverts under those roads and getting in there with flashlights or cameras of some sort, and as they discover the need for repair or replacement, my assumption is that's where all of these are going to be activated. So Mike can correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I like the idea of the additional or the change to the approval process, and I also like the idea of not approving this until we really understand what we've got our hands on, and not in.
Well, here's
Personally.
what I think I understand, is that I don't think we're necessarily increasing our involvement in stormwater issues as they relate to RTA projects. We've always been doing that to some extent, right?
Right.
So I think what I've assessed from this discussion is it's really more about the mechanism of how they award stuff that's more expedient and a little bit higher dollar value, so they can get more work done quicker without the delay of letting an RFP on the street. That it's really not necessarily increasing the dollar value of what stormwater-related work we're doing. It's really about the mechanism of how they go about doing it. And what the city is telling us is that by increasing the task order limit, I can get a large amount of work on an already awarded contract quicker without having to take that 15 or 20-day delay to let it on. I can get them started with 100, but if I got $300,000 work, I got another 30, 45 days of RFP work that I've got to do to get to that 350 quicker. And so now that I've understand the discussion, I think I understand the mechanism. Did I explain that about right?
Yes.
So, but what is not clear and concerning me is it's not clearly stated in the backup documents that that's what they're doing. So I don't think we're increasing the risk to RTA in the amount of stormwater, other than we're doing more work. But it's just the mechanism to me. Did anybody, Dave?
Is this something we need a motion on?
No.
Let's make sure we got everyone's
We've got a
opportunity.
whole lot of talking, let's do something.
Getting late, I hate to see us make a bunch of decision and kind of a motion that relates to policy and changes when there's a lot of things in the wording of it that really needs to be changed. And there's probably also a lot of discussion that needs to go on between the city and PPAG or whatever.
PPACG or PPRTA?
RTA staff?
And Rick, so, yeah. Maybe the city take it off,
Them guys.
rethink it, reword it.
Well, it's presented, so we.
Yeah, and we're not looking at, the only difference in what we're doing is asking for a higher limit. You're going to use these contracts for RTA-related work.
It's raised some of the other questions that have come up before as far as task orders, how they get approved and all that kind of stuff.
Well, I think, I kind of like Rick's, I guess if it brings more a comfort level, if we have to send the task orders, or at least give him a summary of this task order we're thinking of issuing, he could look at it. I mean, that's going to add more work to him, but, I think that's reasonable.
I won't be here today. I'm much more comfortable with this.
When Rick was talking about the 2C paving, and then you would be looking at more roads, so is this just stormwater for PPRTA?
It's
For every road in
it's an on-call contract for designers, and it's geared more towards stormwater. So how I see for RTA is, if we have a bridge or a culvert that collapses or fails on us, we can get issued one of these consultants.
But it's not necessarily a PERTA project, because this is maintenance funds, this is for any street-related.
No, this is for any fund, city, RTA, whatever.
The contract mechanism.
The contract, yes.
Okay.
So we might use it to go take care of a PPRTA project, bridge
You could
maintenance.
also use it for a 2C project.
Yes, or a true stormwater, but that would be paid out of stormwater funds.
Because I thought at first it was just for PPRTA.
No, it's for everything. We just want to, we want it, yeah. And that's why we're asking for the RTA component to be raised, because we can use it.
That's part of the clarity in the narrative that
Yeah.
this is just part of a larger contract, so umbrella contract.
May I make a motion?
You may.
I'd I'd like to make a motion that we not accept this proposal, that we get to look at it again with more clarity, with wording, with more consideration for approval process at the next meeting.
Second.
So we have a proposal.
A motion.
We voted on the final three, right?
Right.
It was
So we have
bifurcated.
a proposal,
A motion.
One of those
a
things.
motion to not approve
1
the
through
first
8.
8 items and a second,
Second.
and without more clarity.
Well, I guess I'd request that you either approve it or disapprove it. I think we're going to bring it to the board. We'd like to. And we can,
The board can give them direction. So any further discussion? Gene?
I thought the motion was to table it for 1 month with the additional clarification as opposed to disapprove.
That was the motion.
That was the motion. Correct.
No, she didn't say it that way, but that's basically what she meant.
Proposal to table it. Joan, you still okay with seconding that?
To table it?
Table it until next month?
Why?
More
Why
information.
table it?
Clarity.
Oh, all right. Instead of just, okay, I'll go with that.
Doesn't know.
Any other discussion? Steve, you need to recuse yourself.
Yep, I need to recuse
Steve's
myself.
one of the contractors, so make note that we.
Well, no wonder I didn't want to approve it.
Okay, so may I see a show of hands of all those in favor of the motion on the table to table it with further clarification?
Sure is.
So hold your hand up, so
Table, it is tabling it.
It is tabling.
Put your hand up there, Ed.
Okay, Joe.
She'll smack you with it.
11.
and all those opposed to table?
One recused.
3, 4.
Oh, no.
Okay.
And one recused,
One recused.
excused, or something.
11-4 and 1 abstain.
So that would be,
No.
that would be
Okay.
the committee's recommendation that you take it to the.
Okay.
board. You know, I mean, you'll take your agenda item just like you did to us, and our recommendation will be given to the committee, and the board makes a decision.
Okay.
And you'll explain sort of the sentiment behind it, just more information?
Reb will, yes, for sure.
I want to know why controversial. Jim's always there, except when we have one of these.
He has the power
To the western.
No, he has the power to figure out when it's going to happen and plan something different.
In one of our previous meetings, we spent an inordinate amount of time discussing the limits of PPRTA liability on task orders.
Okay, folks, this is getting long.
We left it at 100,000.
That's right.
Yes.
If we're going to do 200,000 here, should we ask those folks to come back and maybe rethink that if we're willing to do it 200,000?
But we're not
We
willing.
just said we weren't willing to.
But not for another?
We said no.
So the vote was to not do it at this level now. I don't remember the policy 4 conversation about limits, that, what we thought about. I don't even recall the conversation.
I don't either.
You might not have been here.
Just
That was, yeah, that was established back in the first of the,
It's always
back,
been 100,000, and
it was 25,000 originally, and it changed. It graduated to 100,000
yeah, but now we've raised it for Corey for
to
for
500,000
that
with
stuff.
$100,000 task
Now
force.
you're-
no, it's still 100, it's still 100, yeah.
Yeah, and you're now proposing it for this section, so
Yeah.
do we have it 200,000 for stormwater and 100,000 for sewer pipe? You know, I mean, that's probably something that we could bring up maybe between. you
Yeah, I
guys.
noticed.
Whether it's something we need to address to the board policy for.
Either that or just let it lie until it comes up.
Hey,
Well, the first time you, yeah. All right. Any other questions for city rep?
well, before we go any further, Rick's asked for something, and I need to ask Rick as well. Could we put forth a proposal that regardless of the situation, task orders should be given to PPRTA staff prior to asking.
As an info copy?
Yeah, an info, so he's got a heads up that city is planning to work over here on Boone Creek. There's no Boone Creek in this county. But over here, and he's got some heads up that there may be some task orders coming under this contract. When I say that, maybe it's engineering or maybe it's a thing. I don't know whether we can do something or just advise him during the meeting.
Something you
Let
can
us
bring up
move on, folks.
might be considered an overreach on the part of the committee, but
I think,
I
if you have something for $5,000, I think that's kind of a waste of time for both of them.
For
I think we need a dollar amount.
needs to be over a dollar amount. It
Because the
can't be
task
every
order for-
routine task orders.
Is
Well-
going to be too many.
$100,000. We've already set the limit for a task order, maximum of $100,000. Make him aware. Maybe you're going to do $50,000 today and $500,000 tomorrow. Is it going to be two different locations? How does Rick know? How does PPRTA staff, I'll take Rick out of the picture, how do they know until they get an invoice that there's a task order going to be defined? And by the time you've gotten an invoice, the work is done and you have no way of knowing.
I'm going to go back to my argument before. That's my job, is to manage that project. And if I have a task order today and then maybe one in 2 weeks, it's my job, as Mike said, to figure out that falls under PPRTA. It's his liability, not ours.
But then you get into a fight, Colt, between you and me, PPRTA, and one of the member governments,
You could, you're right. But
and I'm just trying to head that off. He's going to have to try and justify.
Trying to fix something that it's not broke at this point.
Thank you.
So I think until we get some kind of violation, or we get some kind of stuff that raises to the level that it triggers the board, it's probably not our point at this point to be trying to set that. We really have no rationale other than potentially. And so I think we're kind of heading down an overreach and a micromanagement thing, and we've been down that road before.
And I think, and I'm not, Rick mentioned that some stuff got returned, but I think, the city and Rick and RTA staff, we're kind of aware of some of these trigger issues, and I think we're communicating with them and saying, hey, we're thinking of bringing this to the board, or so. I think that's a good thing that there might be. The issues, I think, are not as great as what they are.
I'd say let's move on and be aware of it, but let's not. I think be against taking anything at this point. We don't have anything to substantiate our concern other than concern. No?
I was just going to request, since it's 3:45, we move on with the agenda.
Yeah, let's get ready to do that right now.
You're going to do city.
Okay, capital maintenance, public transportation, Ms. Jennifer, El Paso.
Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County. We have 3 items for your consideration today. The first one is a maintenance item, and this is for our 2016 crack seal program. We are requesting $30,000 to West States Incorporated for crack seal material. This is material that our crews will that we will be purchasing for our crews to use to maintain the roadways. The second item is a contract amendment with AECom for $63,725, and this is for design, additional design, preliminary design. For this project, if you're familiar with Monument Hill Road, there's a significant barrier. It's kind of squeezed between CDOT I-25 right-of-way and then some significant improvements. And so as we were looking at that, when we did the original preliminary design, we didn't include to be able to look at retaining walls. And because we're trying to accommodate the roadway and can't get into CDOT right-of-way and are looking to minimize the impacts, when we did the alternative analysis, we want to look at the opportunity to do retaining walls rather than getting into a lot of property and a lot of property acquisition on commercial properties along Monument Hill Road, which would be very much more expensive. So as we looked at the The alternatives, I think we need to explore the opportunity for some retaining walls along there. So that additional money is for doing some geotechnical boring and some design considerations.
Southern end of that?
Yes, primarily yes. And then the third item is a contract amendment for our Mark Shuffle Road South project, and this is for some additional design consideration. The bulk of that, probably about $160,000, is some funds for RFIs during construction, and also some money to finish up the design, some surveying, support services through construction, and then some money for property acquisition. But the bulk of that is for requests for information during design. It's about $160,000 of that $190,000. So that's just an allowance. Again, if we don't need it, we won't use it, but it's just there so that we're not coming back to you with a bunch of change orders every time we have some design issues. So I don't anticipate that we'll use that all, but hopefully that should carry us through to the end of the project. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer those now.
Any questions for John? I have one. So, in June, you were the acting county engineer. This just says county engineer.
Correct, I've been appointed county engineer.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd like to offer condolences. I want to offer condolences.
So I'm excited, and we have a lot of good things ahead of us, so
Good, congratulations.
thank you.
Maybe now we'll start seeing her assistant now. She can delegate this meeting to someone else now, right?
I like this meeting. These are good times for us to be able to have good questions and hopefully give you good answers, so.
Do I hear a motion to accept the county's,
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Dill and Consider over Gene?
Second.
Got it. Thank you for the third. We appreciate that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, with appreciation.
Brian? So we have the City of Transportation Transit Services.
Girl.
Order? What?
Are we? Am I out of order? 7C, you said, right?
Change orders come.
All right, sorry. Sorry.
Good afternoon, Brian Vituli,
Keeps me
Scratch
alive.
that.
City of Colorado Springs Mountain Metro Transit, with your monthly transit report. For our fixed route services, May of 2016 was up almost 12% from May of 2015. For our ADA powered transit services, there was a slight decrease of 5.6% over that same time period. And for our Vanpool Metro Ride services, there was a little over 12% decrease from May of 2016 to May of 2015. Brief project update. Last month I gave you the status on our downtown transit station relocation study. Since then, we've had, the consultant team has finished the site selection criteria. They performed the level 1 screening of approximately 30 sites. You know, they looked at the past 6 studies that have been done over the last 2 decades. That kind of gave a starting point of what locations were still available from those other time periods. A lot of them were not. Some new sites came up, but overall they looked at 30 sites that were available, ended up with about 12. And some of these criteria were basically pass-fail. Either the site could work on certain items or it could not. So if it did not work, they were eliminated. So we're left with 12 sites to move forward to the level 2 screening, which will be more of a comparative analysis of those 12 sites. So again, looking at the criteria, seeing how those sites will work operationally, safety-wise, what community assets could be built into the new center. We'll end up with maybe 5 or 7 sites that will rise to the surface. The other ones will go by the wayside. Then we'll move forward to a level 3 screening which will get us down to 1 or 2 sites. We were hoping to have 1 public site and 1 private site. The public sites are very, very few. There's one at the southeast corner of Chimino and Colorado Avenue. It sits below grade Colorado Avenue. It has nice access from both sides of Colorado Avenue. You can take the turnaround, but that site is, I think it was part of a city lawsuit. There was some contamination from some type of CSU facility, so it's been capped with asphalt, and could be very expensive if we would redevelop it and have to remediate the site. So there's that one, and then there's also the 2 blocks of Pueblo Avenue. The right-of-way could be the public facility that could be available, and then we would have to negotiate with adjacent property owners for, room for amenities or TOD facilities. So they're mostly private sites, so we'll see what happens when we get toward the end of the project. And since last month, we've had our second technical advisory group meeting and our second stakeholders advisory group meeting, and we had our first open house on June 22nd. Had probably 30 or 40 people there, and this is where we presented those 30 sites that we started with and where we are now with 12 sites. We asked them to look at the study area, break it into six areas, asked them where would they like to see a new station, and then went a little bit further and said, of those 12 sites that are available, what is your best choice for a site? So we're still going through the results of that. And as I said, the consultants will start that level 2 screening very soon. And we're still looking for a September project completion for that. And in your memo, under this item, the status, there's a project website. It's coloradosprings.gov/metro station. We're putting all the materials from the technical and stakeholder meetings and the open houses. So if you would like to get a little more in detail than what I'm giving, you can go there.
Do you happen to have maps of the current proposed location, so that we can actually map them out and take a look at them? They're on that site.
It would be on this website. Yep.
Can I ask another question?
No.
Unfortunately, I had to skip the meeting about Nevada and transit. How did that turn out?
Well, I'm going to give a little update on our fall service change item there too. So, any other questions on that?
Just quick, what do you attribute the van pool decline?
Don't really know. That's been a trend though. The last several months we've been seeing a decrease in that, and I know there was a time where we were trying to move people into larger vans, and there was a little bit of opposition to that. They'd rather travel in smaller Toyota Sienna type vans, and I think this may be a layover from some of that. But we're really still trying to market the van pool services, and they're just the growth is not really quite there yet.
So you still have the larger vans that maybe people are just saying that?
Right, and we have fewer of them now. We see that that's not really that attractive, and so we're getting more of the smaller Toyota type vans. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. And I'm going to pass around our fall 2016 service change proposal. This was just released last week. We normally have 2 schedule changes per year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And right now, we are limited, since we're still short on larger fixed route buses. We need to get more on site before we add peak service, and that's our weekday peak service. But what we are able to add is a little bit of off-peak service. So we're proposing, we've bundled all of our fall changes into 3 categories. Service increases, So you'll see some frequency improvements on Route 7 and 27. 7 goes from the downtown terminal to the Citadel Mall, and the 27 goes from Pikes Peak Community College in the south to the Citadel Mall. So Saturday service, thank you. Saturday service will be increased from 60 minutes to 30 minutes. We'll be adding weekday evening and Sunday service on Route 4, and we'll be adding Saturday service on Route 39. And this is a lot of what we've been hearing coming into our customer service folks, but also at public meetings, that we need some more weekday evening and Saturday, Sunday service. A lot of the jobs that our riders take our services for are not Monday through Friday jobs, 8 to 5. A lot of them work in the evenings. A lot of them work on the weekends. Route 4 adds service to A Street, past the Walmart on A Street, which is always welcome. And a few other items, we're adding one more round trip on Route 12 and a Saturday outbound trip on Route 6. And as a result of some of the changes that we made in the spring, we're trying to tweak some of the schedules to make our connections work a little bit better. So that's where these scheduling modifications come in. They are things that you probably wouldn't even notice unless you look at a hand schedule. They're literally just timing changes, changing the pulse of routes 19 and 39 to leave the terminal at a different time. Sometimes those adjustments can make our riders' lives easier with the better connections. Another one of the improvements that we were told to consider as a result of the spring changes is to reroute Route 5 as it leaves and comes into the downtown terminal from Weber Street onto Wasatch. The Centennial Plaza is a senior housing facility, and they have to, with the changes to the Route 6 in the spring, they now have a longer walk, kind of up a grade to get to Weber. So by rerouting it onto Wasatch, that'll make that walk a little bit easier, make traveling a little bit easier in that area, and with very, very little impact to the couple stops that are on Weber. Now, Brian, getting to your question about North Nevada, there's a group of very vocal North Nevada residents who formed a group called Save Our Street, and they're totally opposed to any bus service on Nevada, let alone the 15 service that we've been trying to gain in this city. We added 15-minute service on Boulder and Platte last spring. We now have 15-minute service on North Nevada and South Nevada. And we're planning to add 15-minute service on Academy Boulevard, hopefully the end of 2017 or 2018, whenever we get new vehicles. But so the Save Our Street Coalition, as well as the Old North End neighborhood, are opposing any service on Nevada. We had a neighborhood town hall several weeks ago where it was, yeah. So it gave city staff a chance to present our reasons for doing this, our long-range vision, why we're doing this, and then there were two presentations given by the Old North End neighborhood and then the Save Our Street group. And so we were told to have a follow-up meeting with the leader of the Old North End neighborhood group and the Save Our Street Coalition. And our attempt at compromise is what you'll see here is option 1, and that is keeping one route, Route 9, on Nevada, and moving Route 19 off of Nevada 1 block east onto Weber. And while that still isn't 15-minute service on that corridor, it's 1 block away, which is something that we'd rather not have to do, but we think that that's a pretty good compromise. Our riders, depending, the way both routes are scheduled, they can go to Nevada or to Weber, 1 block away, and still almost have 15-minute service. What the Old North End organization proposed was to move basically out of the neighborhood to Route 1 on I-25 and to take the other one onto Wasatch. Save our streets just once, nothing on Nevada. What they did is they kind of came up with the proposal, which is what you'll see in option 2, which is to run 1 route on Cascade and 1 route on Wasatch.
Well, wait a minute, we're gonna kill more college kids across the street if you go up Cascade.
And it's also going to be 1 lane.
There you go.
So you can walk across while you're texting and get hit.
That's right.
Just one place.
Single fatalities at a time.
Well, no, you're going to have as much chance to get
I
hit.
feel badly for the transit folks, and I understand wanting to keep a neighborhood, but Nevada is a major corridor.
What part of Nevada was not within moved in?
Catholic street. I'm sorry
It's
if
a
they don't
fo-
like
it's-
it,
it's-
but I would tell them to go jump. That's me.
I'd
You'd have to
second
stand
that,
in line
Jim.
behind me.
He thinks that makes some difference.
Other than NIMBYism, what was their gritch about it being on Nevada, except that it's their...
They don't want bus traffic in
Traffic.
their neighborhood. That's
Traffic.
what it's really about.
But
Oh,
what's the
well,
stated?
Wine Me a River.
The stated reasons
Yeah.
are many. It's, I think in 1991, they did their Old North End neighborhood master plan.
Yeah.
So I think it was adopted, it's city ordinance, I believe, and it says something about the equitable distribution of traffic through the neighborhood. And Nevada,
Because now it's equitable.
right, yeah, and Nevada is a major,
I sat on the Historic Preservation Board for the city.
I'm sorry.
So I'm well familiar with that neighborhood.
Mhm.
And, you know, I understand the concerns. However, anybody who's been on that road, you know, it's not a not traveled road. So there's only one good reason
right.
they don't want bus travelers in their neighborhood. That's what it really is about.
How am I supposed to?
Pull down
The first time one of them needs a bus. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah, I want to.
No, they'll have a limit.
Well,
They
yeah,
won't
so
need a
it's,
bus.
you know, there's about 17,000 trips per day on Nevada and, you know, 4, 5, 6 on those other 3 north-south streets. And it's, you know, they say that they're not wide enough, but the cross-section on all of those streets is the same. I mean, how much time do you have? There's a lot of that. It's just,
Jim?
Jim?
Other than being at that meeting, which I'm sorry I missed, is there anything
Got 2 of us pointing at you.
your position?
well, yeah, you know, there are public meeting times and locations on this brochure on the front. But if you do not have to be present to comment, you can call the 385-RIDE or the transit info. Yes. Yep. So we'll be collecting all of the information, all the comments that we get at the public meetings and through these other sources, and then we'll be, the week after the public meetings, evaluating all the comments and then coming up with our final recommendation.
Mr. Dill.
Yeah, has Dave Munger and the people from Kono made a stand in this or public position?
Not at this time, not yet.
The reason I was curious, I know that Dave's involved with the
Right.
North End. And
He lives there.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
Kono goes a long ways in helping him.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that Kono hasn't taken a position.
Okay, that was-
I just find it interesting that one group can totally flip everything on its ear.
No, 2
That
groups.
just
Four homeowners kept Constitution as a coming east by 4.
No kidding. Do you know the city?
Jim?
Oh, you don't want to comment further.
The, one of the things that I liked about putting the 15-minute headway on a street was that provided a mechanism where all of the east-west groups could actually get into that 15-minute headway and go someplace and get off and go someplace
Right.
else. In other words, it gave Mountain Metro, for I think the very first time, the possibility of being able to get from one place in town to another place in town in a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
Now, that's sort of an idea. The question is, if we did it on one street, would it work?
Well, what we're looking at now, what is very crucial is that we keep those transfer locations at Taylor and Nevada, just south of Fillmore, so north of the old North End neighborhood, and at Cache and Nevada, because that's where we have the 6, 8, 12, all of those connecting feeder routes into the Nevada corridor. That's where they transfer into that corridor. And while it's important, it's a little bit less important how we get through the neighborhood. You know, of course, we would like to be just like those 17,000 trips. I know that's the most direct way north-south through that area is to go on Nevada Avenue. We think we can make the Nevada-Weber option, we're pretty sure that that can work. The Cascade and Wasatch option, we're already very restricted on time. Kathleen Krager's vowed to work with us to try to retime some of the signals, so we may be able to get a little bit of time back there. We're still, checking the running time on both of those corridors to see if it could work. We think it can, but we're unsure yet. And what's really important is UCCS, after our spring service change, they vowed to make a new pull out up on campus. So right now we're just using one of their roundabouts as a way to turn around Route 9. We're going this fall, we're going to be going back into the campus. So that's going to add a little bit of time. So the Cascade Wasatch option, while that's Save Our Streets and Onan's proposal, we think that could work. We're a little bit unsure, so we're still checking on that. But, from a rider perspective, we're basically going back to where we were, where we had a route on Cascade and Wasatch, and that separation of 4 blocks totally ruins the high-frequency corridor that we were trying to set up.
What is your ideal out of these three?
Well, it's very.
My ideal
Yeah.
would be use Nevada, because
Yeah.
that's what it should be.
Right.
But that's apparently not an option.
Yeah, that would be. I mean, that is our strongest desire, and
Use Nevada.
keep both routes on Nevada. And it's, there will be an awful lot of action taken by the Community Transit Coalition, a lot of our riders. We're hoping that the word gets out and, they see the benefits of this 15-minute service. And, we've already gotten some comments in to say, stay on Nevada.
We can raise the flag.
Right. Yep. So it could go that way. Nevada Weber is not a bad option, but we would prefer to stay on Nevada. So we'll just have to. And what's important is, in the Old North End neighborhood and the Save Our Street group needs to understand this the most, is that it's not we're not going to count votes at the end of the public comment period and say, there are 100 votes against what we want to do and 25 for it. It's going to be a balance of some of that, but also some professional judgment and what's better for the system overall, what's better operationally. So it's a balance of all of those things. So any help you can all give on getting the word out or sending in some comments, we would appreciate it. However you want to go, just get involved if you like to get involved.
If we email you guys, should we CC council?
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you'll have the 3 public meetings.
Yes.
12th and the 14th.
Right.
And then after that, we'll just go for a decision.
Yes. So after the public meetings, the public comment period is open until July 21st.
Okay.
We'll look at all those comments, and then I'll make my recommendation to Craig Blewett, and then it will go to Travis and the Chief of Staff and the Mayor, and that'll be by August 5th. That has to be that decision has to be made.
Go to council?
It will not, no. Nope, it is strictly a executive office decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Steve, you have a question?
I do, yeah. Brian, have you heard from the Weber neighborhood at all?
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So if you propose to make the switch, I know the residents along Nevada are incredibly vocal.
Right, right.
Weber's probably not as much.
Mhm.
So I'm just curious if you have heard from them, because if you do make the
17th.
proposal to change, they might get vocal.
Probably
Right.
not.
Well, that's the interesting part. The Old North End is speaking on the Old North End, which is supposed to include all those streets. And but we have some of the individual comments we've been getting in our customer service say, are not in support of moving to Weber. So there seems to be some, there doesn't seem to be cohesiveness with the Old North End plan. Yeah, you're exactly right. And again, Tejon isn't the best option, so that hasn't even really come up in discussion. But it's basically go back to where you were on Cascade and Wasatch, because those neighbors have had the buses for decades and they're used to it, and they should be fine with it. It's just whatever you do, just get it off of Nevada.
Privileged college kids.
Right.
they
Right.
Okay, one more comment, and we need.
President of the Board of Commerce, I would like to defend us. They have not come to present this program to us. We were more than happy to show our support for Kathleen Krager's program. We'd be more than happy to study this one and put our support behind them if it's presented to us. So until we are presented, we can't really recommend or support in our defense.
Good point.
I don't
Okay.
think you need to.
Any other questions for Brian? We got to move on. We got a couple things we got to do here. Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
I'll talk to him privately.
Okay. We need to make an amendment to our agenda and I'm proposing to add an item 7C. It's a change order request report for the city that wasn't on here. So can I hear a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second. So moved. Okay. And all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So Jennifer, you want to do the county one first, please?
Just briefly, because this is informational, we just have property acquisition reports, and this was 2 parcels owned by the same property owner. We did an appraisal, and the owner did not do an appraisal. They took our appraised value, and that's all.
Any questions, Joe? Good deal. All right.
Thanks.
Mike, you want to do the city? And you have, this was on your desk on the place?
Yes, that's a change order to add some utility design work to the project, and CSU will be paying for that.
I have a question.
All right, go ahead.
You're giving it to ACOM, but it's CSU utility design? Or
It's the water line in the road. They usually have us do it for them.
Utilities has you do the design of it?
And they pay for it. Just,
And the other thing is, that's 8%, not 0.08%.
0.08
Okay.
versus 0.8.
okay,
No, it's 8.
Oh,
okay.
all right. Go ahead, Tom.
Flip this.
Not sure what's going on there, but. What's, yeah.
All right. Any questions, other questions for Mike? Administrative actions, report, board actions, that's information on anybody got any question with what Rick put in the package? Any questions on the staff field review report? Rick's monthly, his field trip.
Field trips.
All right. Have any any agenda topics for next month's meeting? Somebody want to propose? Amy, that'll come back to us by way of the amendment.
And I guess that's kind of an action item for Mike too, to bring some more information or.
We can request it, it's up to whether the board chooses to approve it. If the board chooses to approve what they present, regardless, and override our,
Oh, I see.
if they override our recommendation and decide to approve it all, then there's no action.
Got it.
Right, Rick? Yeah. Okay. Any communications for anyone? Anybody want to add anything that?
That's a little better than I had.
I handed out a single sheet that talks about the Baptist Road RTA sales tax ending, and I just wanted to let you know that I personally confirmed that by going to the Monument Walmart and buying something last Saturday, the 2nd, and sure enough, the sales tax that shows on the receipt had dropped a penny.
So do you want us to reimburse you for that purchase
No,
or your trip?
no.
How much is the sales tax out there?
7.13 instead of 8.13.
I gotta go shopping.
7.13.
One question, Rick, and it may fall. Are we still on the Fountain City litigation issue?
Yes.
We're still on the September for that to go to court?
Unless, September 9 is the tentative court date, unless both sides have filed motions for summary judgment, which means both sides are asking the judge to grant approval to their side without going to court, because it's so one-sidedly clear for my side or your side. So both sides are asking the judge to grant summary judgment in favor of them. So if the judge does grant either side approval on summary judgment, then there's no court
And
case.
is there an appeal process if they rule in favor of the RTA? You could Fountain them.
Probably,
Didn't Jennifer say there was? I
All
thought she
right,
said there
any
was
other
a.
questions, comments? Thank you, we're adjourned.
The Paso County Fair is in a week and a half.
Where's
So
it at?
Come to Calhoun, come.
Where's Calhoun?
Whatever.
Where's Calhoun?
Friday night before the fair, the town of Calhoun does a big party, and if I see any one of these faces here, we have a beer garden and I'll buy you a beer.
Whoa! What day,
Friday the 15th, if you can find it.
Are you going to stay over?
And we're not telling you.
Hey, Cindy,
Yes?
we've got a conflict already we're trying to